Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, a fascinating week 2 matchup. Boise State heading on the road to play the Oregon Ducks. And you look at Boise State, I've been pretty vocal. I think this is the best team that we see in the group of five. I think they have one of the best players in all of college football and running back Ashton Jeanty. And from an offense perspective, I was really impressed with what Maddox Madsen was able to do against Georgia Southern. You look at the Oregon Ducks and say this is a team that I've been very high on all offseason as well. They were my pick to win the Big Ten. They still are my pick to win the Big Ten. That being said, a very sloppy game against Idaho in week 1. And I think a lot of Oregon fans are sitting there and saying, hey, we know we have to play significantly better football Saturday night to beat a Boise State team that I think is very legit as a group of 5 program. Really excited to get into this matchup, talk about a few things that Boise State and Oregon can do to have success against one another. I'll give my game prediction at the end of the episode as well. Now, before we get into it, as always, let it fly in the comment section. The best part about doing these game predictions is hearing from you guys, whether you're a Boise State fan, an Oregon fan, whether you disagree, agree with the takes. The best part about doing these game predictions is chopping it up about football with you guys. So would love love to hear from you guys in the comment section. Of course, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. The amount of support y'all have shown for these game previews and predictions, it's been amazing. We appreciate you guys. And without further ado, let's get into this one. I want to start with this Boise State offense going up against an Oregon defense that I don't think is getting enough attention for a very solid performance against Idaho week 1. Yes, did the offense struggle? Did the offensive line struggle? Did we want to see more from this Oregon offense? Yes, absolutely. But I thought this Oregon defense, specifically on that defensive line, really showed me a lot of things that I was looking for against Idaho. Now, how can this Boise State offense have success against this Oregon Ducks defense? I think it starts with your best player on your football team, and that's running back Ashton Jeanty. And I think what makes Ashton Jeanty such a special player is he's not just a running back. Yes, he went for 20 carries for 267 yards and 6 touchdowns against Georgia Southern on Saturday. That being said, you go back to the 2023 season, Ashton Jeanty is extremely dynamic as a pass catcher as well. And I think one of the things Boise State does a brilliant job of is getting Ashton Jeanty involved in a lot of different ways, whether it's different run concepts, whether it's out of the backfield as a pass catcher. I'm a massive fan of whenever you have coaches say, these are our best football players, we're going to go out of our way to get them the football and let them impact this game. I think Boise State does an incredible job using Ashton Jeanty in a ton of different ways. And then on top of that, I liked what I saw from Maddox Madsen against Georgia Southern as well. Watch the game back Monday morning. You can tell why Maddox Madsen beat out Malachi Nelson in camp. And that's just because his command of this offense is strong. I mean, the ball's coming out quick. It's coming out on time. It's coming out accurately. Does he have the arm talent that Malachi Nelson does? No, probably not. But this is a quarterback that is very much so in command of this Boise State offense. And when you have a run game that's as good as Boise State's is, that's all you need from your quarterback and Maddox Madsen. And so one of the big keys for this Boise State team, I think the biggest key, I would say, is getting Ashton Jeanty involved early and having success on first and second down. Because the one part that I could see Boise State struggling in this matchup is if Oregon's winning on first and second down, stopping the run with Ashton Jeanty, I don't think Maddox Madsen is the kind of quarterback that you want operating consistently in those third and long, obvious passing situations. Yes, I think Maddox Madsen showed me a lot of good things against Georgia Southern, but I think a lot of Boise State fans would agree that he's not necessarily a guy that you want to have carry this football team, specifically in those obvious passing situations where he's asked to consistently, push the ball down the field. Maddox Madsen's a really good quarterback because of the command that he has of this offense, not necessarily because he's the most talented quarterback that you see in the country. And so I think the biggest key to this Boise State offense going up against this Oregon defense is, can you win on first and second down? And can you stay in those third and manageables where we're not putting too much on Maddox Madsen's plate? That's probably the number one goal if you're this Boise State offense. And on the flip side, if you're this Oregon defense, you got to figure out a way to shut down Ashton Jeanty, which is easier said than done. Ashton Jeanty is a phenomenal football player. If I'm the Oregon Ducks, I am walking guys like Kobe Savage and Tasheem Johnson into the box And I'm really leaving my cornerbacks on islands. I'm playing with a single high safety. I'm asking guys like Jabbar Muhammad to kind of erase these Boise State wide receivers and almost in a way just kind of selling out to stop this rushing attack for Boise State. Because if there is one thing that Boise State does struggle with on offense is when Ashton Jeanty is not, I wouldn't say taking over games, but not having a lot of success. Boise State does tend to struggle on offense. Now, I think they got some wide receivers who are dynamic. Guys like Camper, I would like to see a little bit more of Chris Marshall. They have some wide receivers who can make plays, but if you're Oregon and you're looking at this matchup, you probably have a lot of success or a lot of confidence, I should say, with guys like Jabbar Muhammad or Dante Manning on the boundary against these Boise State wide receivers and really asking Maddox Madsen to win some of those matchups and push the ball down the field and asking those wide receivers to create some of those explosive plays. And so if I'm Oregon, I think you're going to see a lot of heavy boxes, and I think you're going to see them try to take away Ashton Jeanty and see if Maddox Madsen on the road against a very good Oregon secondary can have some success. And I think the biggest key to this matchup is who has the success on first and second downs, and can Oregon kind of create some of those third and longs, get after with a pass rush that I thought was very good. Guys like Derek Harmon, Tatum, Mateo, I thought they looked very good rushing the passer. That's probably what you're looking for the most in this football game. Now, on the flip side, this Boise State defense, I think, has a really quality defensive line, specifically in the pass rush. The number one thing I'm looking for is a little bit of a rebound performance from this Oregon offensive line that, look, we said this on Sunday morning. We know these Oregon offensive linemen, they're good football players. We saw it all of last year, right? Johnny Cornelius obviously struggled week 1 against Idaho. I think that had a lot more to do with kind of shuffling the deck on this Oregon offensive line as opposed to Johnny Cornelius not being a good football player. And so what I'm most interested in, especially if Matthew Bedford does return for Oregon, is can we have a little bit more success picking up the pass rush, right? One of those delayed blitzes, some of those stunts. You didn't see Oregon lose as much as one-on-one pass rush battles as much as the communication would at times break down in terms of pass protection, in terms of picking up blitzes, and in terms of picking up those stunts. So that's the number one thing I'm looking for. I think the second thing is you brought Dillon Gabriel in to lead this team to a national championship. There was a reason that Dillon Gabriel was the odds-on favorite to win the Heisman coming into the season. I felt like Will Stein just didn't treat Dillon Gabriel like that kind of quarterback. And yeah, we know what this Oregon offense is, their staple is, right? It's to getting the ball out quick, on time to your playmakers in space, and letting them operate after the catch, right? Bo Nix average depth of target was 6.3 yards down the field last year. Like, Bo Nix was not asked to push the ball down the field consistently in this Oregon offense, but when he had the opportunity to do so, they were able to make defenses play with guys like Troy Franklin. I would like to see Oregon try to push the ball down the field a little bit more in this football game. You go back to Dillon Gabriel in that week 1 performance, his average depth of target was 4.3 yards down the field. He only threw 2 of his passes 20 plus yards down the field. There was very little verticality to this Oregon passing attack. And again, we know that Oregon wants to get the football out quick to guys like Tez Johnson, but there's a reason that not only you brought Dillon Gabriel into this Oregon offense, there's a reason that you brought in a guy like Evan Stewart. And that is to, at least in my opinion, to replace that vertical presence that Troy Franklin gave you last year. And you just didn't really see that last year. And I think it was a mixture of Dillon Gabriel having a little bit of a quick trigger and not looking to push the ball down the field. But I don't think Will Stein did nearly a good enough job asking Dillon Gabriel to push the ball down the field either. And so not only does the pass protection have to get a little bit better, but I would like to see this Oregon offense just open it up a little bit more against the Boise State secondary that just struggled. And I think a lot of Boise State fans would probably agree with this analysis. The weakest part of for this Boise State team on the defense specifically is in the secondary. I think this Boise State pass rush has some guys that have some juice. And so I think it's going to be a really good test for this Oregon offense. Hey, are we going to take a step in the right direction in terms of pass protection? But I think more importantly, can we get after this Boise State secondary? That Georgia Southern was able to create some separation. I'll say this, if Georgia Southern and their wide receivers are able to create some separation and some verticality to that passing attack against Boise State week 1, Dillon Gabriel in this Oregon wide receiver room certainly should be able to do that week 2. And I think the last thing you want to see is just a little bit more space getting created on offense. Boise State, they play some really disciplined football on the defensive side of the football, specifically in the front seven. I think they're really good with the run fits, but they struggled to keep the quarterback in the pocket. And they struggled when Georgia Southern was able to get to the perimeter a little bit. You got some guys who are elite in space, right? Whether it's Kenyon Sadiq, whether it's Tez Johnson, whether it's Noah Whittington out of the backfield. I would like to see Oregon, work the perimeter a little bit. And then when the opportunity presents itself, like go ask Evan Stewart to work vertically down the field and try to hit some of those explosive plays. I'd like to see this Oregon offense just open it up a little bit, kind of like we had with Bo Nix in 2023, where yes, we're getting the ball out quick, on time to our playmakers in space. But when that Boise State defense starts kind of closing down on the line of scrimmage, you got to be able to make them pay vertically with a guy like Evan Stewart. So those are some of the keys that I have for this Oregon offense. Now you get into the pick, and I'll start with this. I have a ton of respect for Boise State. In fact, I think they're going to be a team that you see in the college football playoffs with that group of five bid. That being said, I like this Oregon team. I think, one, they're going to come out with a little bit of a different attitude. I think that performance against Idaho was a wake-up call. You saw Dan Lanning in the press conference just not happy with how that Oregon team performed. So I think, one, they come out a little bit more locked in than you saw week one. But I think more importantly, I do think this Oregon team matches up quite well against Boise State, where I just look at the Boise State secondary and say, I don't know how they're going to deal with all the talent that Oregon has in that wide receiver room. And specifically, I think Oregon is pretty well suited to stop this rushing attack for Boise State. So if you're able to at least somewhat neutralize Ashton Jeanty, it makes that Boise State offense really start to struggle. And then on the defensive side of the football, I think Oregon will be able to get after this Boise State secondary. So give me Oregon to cover we got 18 and a half points. That's a lot of points against a really good Boise State team. And I think the Oregon fans know that you got to see significantly better football from this team if you want to win and kind of not have to sweat this one out. Because if you don't play your best ball, this Boise State team is capable of outright beating you. But more importantly, they can keep this one close. And I kind of expect them to keep it close maybe through three quarters. But I think at some point, Oregon will be able to find those explosive plays, really open up that offense, and end up covering the number. That being said, I don't necessarily feel great about it after what we just saw from Oregon against Idaho, but I'm not ready to hit the panic button just yet on this Oregon team. So I'm going to take Oregon. Ton of respect for Boise State. Would love to hear from you guys in the comments section. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate all the support, and we'll talk to y'all